Hey everybody, Pandemic Gaga is back with a Bible study I'd love to have with you all. Remember, we're looking in Job right now. I don't know that we'll go through the whole book, but we're just going to take it as it comes. But I did finish the first chapter, and that's what I want to look at today. Yesterday it was just the first 5 verses. Today, let's go through the rest of the chapter, kind of paraphrasing Gaga style. First of all, yesterday I remembered after we got done with the Bible study, I was going to show you one of the ways that I study the Bible. And one of my ways is, first of all, I love these notepads. I do. I love these notepads. And I have tons of them. And I'll keep them like if I'm going through and studying a book of the Bible. The first of this one is where I was studying Genesis. That's the first of it, way back here. But I didn't get done with Genesis. I got to like chapter 26 or something like that. And I stopped. And I started something else. I have a habit of doing a lot of things at the same time, I guess. But anyway, so I just flipped it to the back and turned it over. And here's Job, where we're starting on Job. But what I do, my writing, don't worry about what it says. My writing is horrific. But I do an outline form. That I have 2 different ways I study, and this is the way that I do it the most, is I have an outline form, and it's a loose outline form. But for instance, this one of course says Job at the top. Then I just start with chapter 1, and then I will take the verses that have, there's Mikey outside. I will take the verses, and I will pull out the things that have spoken to me. And I will kind of put those in outline form, and I'll write like the verse over here, the verse number where it's found. And that's what I do. It might help you. You could try it. The other way that I study is I'll say the who, what, where, when, why type things, and as I go through a chapter, I will try to find the answers to those questions. Who are we talking about it? Where's the setting at? Why is whatever's happening? I'll try to answer some of those questions like that when I'm studying it through. And so that's the 2 ways that I study, and this one being the prevalent one, is the outline form. But anyway, yesterday, we did the first 5 verses, and I really enjoyed that. That was interesting. But today we're going to start in verse 6 and go through the rest of the chapter. And the thing I learned the most, the thing that stuck out with me the most, is in the very last of the chapter. So we'll get to that. But at the beginning, starting at verse 6, I noticed some things right off the bat. And like I said, I'm really deep. But listen, God teaches you where you're at. And this is where I'm at. And so I'm just bringing you guys all along for the ride. If you want to come, I'd love to have you. But anyway, it says, now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came along among them. And the Lord said to Satan, from where do you come? And Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro on the earth, and from walking back and forth on it. You know what I get out of that? And it's a little bit spooky, but at the same time, it's very powerful. Number 1, Satan, when the Lord allows him, he gets to walk into the throne room of God. Have you stopped and thought about that? He gets to walk into the presence of God when God allows him to. Now, I tell you, that sounds spooky to me. I won't be that close to Satan. But it doesn't bother God a bit. God is more powerful than Satan could ever be. God has already won the battle, and there really probably never was a battle. Satan just had to have one, I guess. But God doesn't bat an eye. And then we see that God actually speaks to Satan and allows Satan to speak back to him. They have a conversation. Have you thought about that? There's something to think about. There's something to think about. God knows what's going on. He knows what's going on. He knows Satan is wandering around this earth trying to destroy people. He can't destroy God's people. God's already made, those people have already made their choice to trust in the name of Jesus. But he's going to stop everybody he can. And if God will allow him, he will mess with our lives in order to get somebody else to not accept Christ. God is sovereign. God holds us in his hand, and he is sovereign. He is not surprised when Satan tries to attack his people. As a matter of fact, in the next verses, we find out that God actually mentioned Job to Satan. He said, hey, have you thought about Job? Now, mind you, God knows what Satan's thinking before he ever says it. But God brought up Job. He's my child. He's good. He's blameless. He loves the Lord. And you know what Satan says? Yeah. You got a hedge around him. You made him wealthy. He's got a great family. Everything's going perfect in his life. I bet he'll cuss you right to your face if you take all that away from him. And God says, you know what? I think he serves me because he loves me and he chooses to, not because of what I've given him or blessed him with. So there's this spiritual, heavenly thing going on. And God says, I love my child, and my child loves me. Now, what do you think about that? He says, I tell you what, I believe that so much, God says, that you can remove everything Job has except his body. And I'll guarantee you he will still worship me. So Satan takes him up on it. Now remember, Job was wealthy, big time wealthy. And I know we think it's weird. Job had donkeys and camels and sheep and Lord knows what other animals that he had. Ox, and that's what back then they judged. That's where you got your wealth from. And we say, that just makes no sense that how many animals you attained meant how much wealth you had. Well, let me just ask you a question. Right now, we're pretty well, our wealth is depending on toilet paper. We're not so far from Job, from his time frame. I'm telling you how quickly our worlds can change. But anyway, Job was home one day. His kids were at the oldest brother's house having a good meal and enjoying each other's fellowship. All his kids were, which means probably grandchildren and in-laws and whatever. They were all there. And a servant, one of Job's servants comes running to the house and gets Job and says, something has happened. Somebody has come in and taken and stolen all of your oxen and all of your donkeys, and they killed every servant that was watching those animals. And before the man could take a breath, another servant comes running to Job, and he says, Job, something awful has happened. Fires come down from heaven, and all of your, was it camels? Let me see. Oh, no, your sheep. All of your sheep have been burned up. And all of the servants that were with them, gone. And before he takes a breath, another servant comes running up. Job, Job. Somebody came and raided us, and they took all of your camels and killed the servants. And before the man could take another breath and finish his story, another servant comes running. Job, Job, terrible winds came through and knocked down the house that all of your family was in and killed every one of them. Job has lost all his wealth. He has lost all his family save himself and his wife. Oh my goodness, y'all. Job is just, he's a man. He probably can't hardly speak the overwhelming sadness is not even a good enough word. It's just within him wanting to come out. The man's lost everything and everybody he loves. And, in the time frame of just maybe a couple of hours, if that. I remember one day, I told you the other day last time that I had cancer in 2000. Well, because my mother had dealt with cancer 5.5 years before then and had it really serious, I knew the moment that I felt that in my breast that I was going to go to 2 doctors. I was going to go get 2 opinions, whether they said it was cancer or not cancer. I was getting 2 opinions, period. So I didn't go to a doctor and get his opinion and then go say, well, I want another doctor and I'm going to get their opinion. I came home from Canada. I got an appointment on Monday with one doctor and on Tuesday with another doctor. I had a biopsy, the whole 10 yards. And on Wednesday, I will never forget that next Wednesday, Michael and I were home. The girls were at school. They were in high school. And Michael and I were home. And it was in, around lunchtime or whatever. And my phone rang. And I answered it, and I was assuming that it would probably be one of the doctors. And sure enough, it was. And basically he said, I'm sorry, but you have cancer. I hung up from him, and I just kind of looked at Michael, and I said, well, he says it's cancer. It was less than an hour that the second doctor called and said the exact same words, I'm sorry, it's cancer. That was overwhelming. And I can't even begin to put into words what that kind of felt like. It was what any of y'all have most of y'all probably have dealt with maybe death of a loved one or serious illness or things like that are really gripping in your life. And that gut-wrenching wanting to weep, but with no sound. I can't even imagine Job. All his wealth gone. Everything he'd worked for all of his life, gone. 10 kids. Maybe 10 in-laws. Maybe Lord knows how many grandchildren. Gone. How does a physical body, human being, even take all that in and process it in any way whatsoever? But let's look at what Job's reaction was. And remember, he's just like you and me. He walked on this earth and he was a child of the king. But he had loved ones, he had a life, he had work, this, that, and the other. Kids were being taught at school, probably not the kind of school we have, but life was going by, life was going on. And this is what gripped me. 2 words grip me. Let me read the very end of Job in verse 20. After Job's been told all this, and he's trying to process some form of remembering how to even breathe, probably. Then Job arose. I almost think he may have been just physically knocked to the ground. Your body just can't take some of this stuff. But then Job arose. He tore his robe. He tore his clothing. It was just so overwhelming. He tore his clothes. He even shaved his head, which is something that was normal back then. If you were mourning or something, that's one thing that the men would do. And then he fell to the ground. He fell to the ground. Oh, Job. Oh, you. Oh, us. We have to live through some of these things. He tore his robe. He shaved his head. He fell to the ground. And then comes the 2 words that are beautiful, shocking, almost inconceivable, and worshipped. He worshipped. Can we take this to heart? Is this a picture that the Lord has placed in His holy book that we can look at and see somebody who has what a day. What a day he had. The Lord told us up front that Job feared Him. He respected God. He did his best to serve Him. And then he told us what happened. This is just the first chapter. This is just the first few days. And we see how Job reacted. He was torn. He was sad. He was overwhelmed. And he fell on the ground. And right when most would curse God, ask why, beg God to not let it be so, Job worshipped. Is this how we're supposed to heal, begin healing our bodies? Immediately, given our sorrow and our unspeakable sadness that we go through sometimes, is this the best way to handle it? To immediately worship God. How can we worship God then? Because God is sovereign. He doesn't want us to be sad, but at the same time we live in this world. But He's sovereign. He knew from the beginning. Satan can only do to God's children what God allows Satan to do. We don't understand all that. Like I told you the other day, my little mind, your little mind will never understand the mind of God. But because we're His children, we can know that He's in control. He sees the whole picture. We see the moment. He sees the whole picture. And we can guess all day long about what if and if only. God doesn't have to guess. God knows. This is a lesson that we need to learn. When things come at us, we're going to hurt. Job hurt. But in our hurt, as children of God, let's fall down and worship Him. Let's fall down and worship Him. Let's give Him, and one of the only ways we can do that is if we're close to Him before this day like Job had comes. If we're in His Word and we're getting to know His character, we're getting to know His promises, we're getting to know His love more and more. If we can do that, then when this Job day comes in our life, we can fall down and worship. It will be automatic. Oh, friends, I love you very much. I love you very much. Our God is good. He is sovereign. He's magnificent and ever and always loving. You, me, His children. We can learn a lot from Job. I love you. I hope you've had a wonderful day. I have. I mowed my yard today. And Michael's still out there doing tractor stuff. I don't know. I think he plays a lot. That's what I tell him. But I just love you. And I want you to know that. And we'll get together and don't think we're going to stay in Job forever, because we're not. And but I think there's a few things we can learn from him. And now it'll be a good time. Okay? We can do it together. All right. I love you guys. Have a good rest of the day. And I will see you tomorrow. Okay? Love you. Bye.